Families are supposed to be built on trust, love, and loyalty. But behind closed doors, secrets grow in silence. Some secrets destroy relationships. Others destroy entire families. My name is Vanessa, and for 3 years I lived with a secret so dark that if my mother ever discovered it, it would tear our family apart forever. Because my mother doesn't know, I sleep with Dad. I know how terrible that sounds. If you had told me 5 years ago that my life would become this twisted, I would have laughed in your face. Back then, we looked like the perfect family. My father, Richard, was respected in our town. My mother, Elena, was sweet, patient, and devoted to everyone around her. And me? I was their only daughter, trying to survive university while pretending I had my life together. But appearances lie. Everything started after my parents' marriage began falling apart. The fights became constant. Every night, there was screaming downstairs while I sat in my bedroom pretending not to hear it. Money arguments, accusations, long silences at dinner. Sometimes my mother cried in the kitchen after Dad left for work. At first, I blamed him. Richard was cold, distant, always on his phone. Sometimes he disappeared for hours without explanation. My mother became paranoid, convinced he was cheating. Maybe he was. One night, I walked downstairs for water and found my mother sitting alone in the dark. "He doesn't love me anymore," she whispered. I didn't know what to say. I hugged her, but deep inside, I felt anger toward my father growing stronger every day. Then something changed. A few weeks later, my car broke down outside campus during heavy rain. I called my mother first, but she didn't answer. Finally, I called Dad. He arrived 20 minutes later. I remember sitting in the passenger seat while rain hit the windshield. He looked exhausted, older than I remembered. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I shrugged. For some reason, that night felt different. We talked the entire drive home. Really talked. About university. About stress. About how lonely life felt sometimes. It was the first genuine conversation we'd had in years. After that, we started speaking more often. He'd text me during the day asking if I'd eaten. Sometimes he'd bring me coffee when I studied late at night. My mother seemed happy we were bonding again. She had no idea what was happening beneath the surface. One evening, Dad and I were sitting in the garden drinking wine while my mother visited her sister overnight. The conversation became personal. "I stayed in this marriage for you," he admitted. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Your mother and I stopped loving each other a long time ago." Hearing that hurt more than I expected. He looked at me differently that night. I noticed it immediately. Not like a father, like a man. I should have walked away. Instead, I stayed. Over the following months, the lines between us blurred. It began innocently enough. Long conversations, lingering hugs, private jokes no one else understood. Then one night, everything crossed the line. I had come home from a party upset after catching my boyfriend cheating on me. I was crying uncontrollably when Dad knocked on my bedroom door. He sat beside me while I vented for nearly an hour. "You deserve better than him," he said softly. I looked up at him through tears. And then it happened. He touched my face. Not like a parent comforting a child. Something else. My stomach tightened instantly. We stared at each other in silence. I knew it was wrong, but I also knew I didn't want him to stop. When he kissed me, I kissed him back. The next morning, I woke up horrified. I avoided him all day. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. Every part of me screamed that what happened should never happen again. But secrets have a dangerous way of pulling people deeper. That evening, he knocked on my door again. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. I crossed a line. I nodded, unable to speak. We can forget it happened. But neither of us wanted to forget. A week later, it happened again. Then again. Soon, our secret became routine. Whenever my mother worked late shifts at the hospital, he came to my room. Sometimes we drove to hotels outside town where nobody knew us. Other times we simply sat together for hours talking about life, regret, and how trapped we both felt. That's the part nobody would understand. It wasn't only physical. It was emotional, toxic, intense. Addictive. He made me feel seen in ways nobody else ever had, and I hated myself for loving it. The guilt slowly destroyed me. Every morning, my mother smiled at me across the breakfast table while I felt sick inside. She trusted us both completely. Sometimes she'd say things like, "I'm glad you and your father are finally close again." I could barely breathe whenever she said that. The lies became exhausting. I stopped dating completely because every relationship felt meaningless compared to the secret life I was living. Friends noticed I was distant, anxious, constantly distracted, but no one could imagine the truth. Then came the first close call. One Saturday afternoon, my mother returned home early from work while Dad was in my bedroom. We heard the front door slam downstairs. Panic exploded through my body. Dad hid in my bathroom while I rushed downstairs pretending to clean. My mother looked suspicious immediately. "Where's your father?" she asked. "I think he went to the store." She narrowed her eyes. For one terrifying second, I thought everything was over. But she simply sighed and walked away. That should have been our wake-up call. Instead, we became even more reckless. Secrets create adrenaline. Fear becomes part of the addiction. Months passed. Then one night, my mother finally confronted me. We were folding laundry together when she suddenly asked, "Do you think your father is cheating on me?" I froze. "What?" "I found hotel charges on our bank account." My heart nearly stopped. She looked heartbroken. "I just need the truth." I wanted to tell her everything right there. I wanted to confess, cry, apologize, and destroy the lie once and for all. But I couldn't, because despite the guilt, I still loved him. So I lied directly to her face. "No, Mom, I think you're overthinking." To this day, I still remember the relief in her eyes after hearing those words. That moment changed me forever, because that was the moment I realized I had become the villain in my own mother's story. After that, the tension inside the house became unbearable. My mother grew increasingly suspicious. She started checking Dad's phone, questioning where he went, asking me strange questions about his behavior. Meanwhile, Dad became possessive. "If she finds out, everything will be ruined," he warned constantly. I started feeling trapped between fear and obsession. Sometimes I tried ending things. Every time I pulled away, he reeled me back in. "You're the only person who understands me. You can't leave me too. I love you." Those words kept me chained to him. Then came the night everything finally exploded. My mother had gone away for the weekend with friends. Dad and I stayed home alone. At first, it felt normal. We ordered food, watched movies, drank wine. But around midnight, we heard a car pull into the driveway. My blood turned cold. "She's back," I whispered. Dad stood up instantly. The front door opened downstairs. Footsteps echoed through the hallway. Then my mother walked into the living room and found us sitting far too close together on the couch. Silence filled the room. I still remember her expression. Confusion first, then realization, then horror. "What is going on?" she asked slowly. Neither of us answered. Dad stood up. "Elena, don't," she snapped. She looked at me, not at him, at me, and I swear that hurt more than anything. Because the betrayal from a husband was one thing, but betrayal from your daughter, that destroyed her soul. Tears filled her eyes immediately. "How long?" she whispered. I couldn't speak. Dad tried stepping toward her, but she backed away like he was poison. "How long?" she screamed this time. 3 years, I finally admitted. The sound she made afterward still haunts me. It wasn't crying. It was devastation. Pure devastation. My mother collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably while I stood there frozen. Dad kept trying to explain, but there is no explanation for something like that. No justification. No excuse. That night ended with shattered glass, screaming, and police arriving after neighbors heard the chaos. My mother left the house before sunrise. She didn't speak to either of us again for months. The town eventually found out. Secrets like ours never stayed buried. People stared at me in supermarkets. Old friends blocked me online. Family members called me disgusting. My aunt sent me a message saying I was dead to her. Dad lost business clients. My mother filed for divorce immediately. And suddenly, the fantasy we'd built together collapsed under the weight of reality. Because forbidden relationships survive in darkness, not in daylight. A few months later, Dad and I stopped seeing each other too. Without secrecy, without adrenaline, without stolen moments, all that remained was shame. One evening, I looked at him across the kitchen table and realized I didn't even recognize the person sitting in front of me anymore. Maybe I never truly did. "You ruined my life," I whispered. He looked stunned. But then I realized something important. I had ruined mine too. Today, I live alone in another city trying to rebuild myself piece by piece. My mother still refuses to speak to me. Last I heard, she moved abroad to start over. I don't blame her. Some betrayals can never be forgiven. And every night before I sleep, I think about the moment everything could have stopped. If only one of us had walked away. But we didn't. And that's why my mother's life was destroyed by the two people she trusted most, me and Dad. Some secrets stay hidden forever, and some destroy everything in the end. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Cheating Stories for more shocking betrayals, family drama, and twisted relationships. Don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts below, because every secret has consequences.